The political futures of President Yoon and South Korea hang in the balance, with the South Korean leader now facing a second impeachment motion over his martial law order. Will President Yoon survive another week? Let's head over to the National Assembly where our Lee Si-hoo is standing by. Si-hoo, how is it looking over there this morning?
Right, Tommy, it's been a quiet morning so far, but we're now starting to feel the air of tension ramp up at this place as we near the hour for the second scheduled vote on the motion to impeach President Yoon at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Now, the security is heavy here today, stronger than last week, with no outside personnel allowed to enter the premises. But as you see behind me, those who are allowed here today, the lawmakers, their aides, the reporters, and the employees of the National Assembly are beginning to arrive at this place, at this main hall of the parliament, to stand close by to witness what could be a landmark event in South Korea's parliamentary history. Now, it's been 11 days since the declaration of martial law on the night of December 3rd, and exactly a week since the first opposition-led push for an impeachment motion against Yoon, which failed to pass, not meeting the minimum number of votes required even to begin counting. This time, the opposition took more time to strengthen the reasonings for impeachment, as stated in the motion, mainly the president's violation of his duty to safeguard the Constitution, now with more allegations added based on the questionings and investigations that plagues this week. The impeachment motion requires at least 200 approvals from the total 300 lawmakers. The key question today is, will there be enough participation and approvals from the ruling party members for the motion to pass?
Right, Si-hoo, that is the key question that I have to ask you. Does the approval seem likely tonight? And where do the rival parties currently stand?
Right, Tammy. So as with the last week, the main opposition Democratic Party, along with the other minor parties, they all are in push for the impeachment. But as with the last week, the 192 members of the opposition needs extra support from at least 8 ruling People Power Party lawmakers. Now, the PPP as a whole decided last week, as a consensus of the party, to opt out of voting, and just 3 members of the PPP actually deviated from the consensus to participate in the vote. But throughout this last week, more ruling party members have spoken openly of their will to actually go out and vote for impeachment. The number stands at least 7 as of this morning. This is just 1 short of the 8 needed from the PPP for the motion to pass. That is, assuming full support from the opposition. However, there are ongoing disputes within the party. Its leader Han Dong-un and his close allies are in support of impeachment, but the new floor leader Kwon Sung-dong, known to be a close ally of Yoon, has said that as of yesterday, the party consensus is to turn down the impeachment. But he did convene a party meeting this morning, so the lawmakers could have a candid discussion and decide on the final consensus together. The meeting actually began a minute ago at 10 a.m., so there are no words from the meeting just yet. But as for the DP, they will also hold a meeting later today in the afternoon, just 30 minutes before they go into the vote. They're expected to once again show their determination and will to pass the impeachment motion tonight. Tammy?
Thank you, Si-hoo. That was our Lee Si-hoo live from the National Assembly. Now, how does the voting procedure work at the parliament here in South Korea? Our Choi Soo-hyung explains.
On Thursday, all lawmakers from the 6 opposition parties again jointly submitted an impeachment motion against President Yoon to the National Assembly. According to the National Assembly Act, a vote on the motion must take place between 24 and 72 hours after being reported to the plenary session. The opposition has scheduled the vote for Saturday at 4 p.m. For the impeachment motion to pass, at least 2/3 of the 300 lawmakers must approve it. Currently, there are 199 lawmakers, including 7 from the ruling People Power Party, who support the motion to impeach the president. This means at least 1 more vote is needed from the ruling People Power Party for the motion to pass. 192 lawmakers from the opposition bloc are also still in favor of the motion, despite Cho Guk, the leader of the Cho Guk Innovation Party, losing his seat after he was sentenced to jail for academic bribery and fraud. He was succeeded by Baek Sun-hee, who is also in favor of impeachment. If the National Assembly approves the motion, the final decision on impeachment will then be determined by the Constitutional Court. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
So we are less than 6 hours away from the impeachment vote. We now go over to the Yongsan Presidential Office, and our Oh Soo-young is standing by there. Soo-young, the last time we heard from President Yoon himself was on Thursday, where he gave an almost half-hour televised address. Just briefly, let's go over the highlights of the speech and what this indicates about his position.
Sure, Tammy. So in his 29-minute speech on Thursday, President Yoon claimed that he had imposed martial law as an act of governance. And he said it was a move to protect South Korea's democracy from what he's always been calling anti-state forces, criminal groups, as well as risks to national security, such as North Korea and Chinese spies. And well, Yoon has mainly argued that for the past 2 years, the opposition have basically been trying to impeach and unseat members of his administration as well, which he calls an act that he has claimed is very unconstitutional. And well, from all of this, I would say there are two things to take away. First, he sounded very defensive. He was clearly trying to explain and justify his decision to impose martial law by first describing how the opposition party is trying to sabotage his administration and its policies, and second, to emphasize he had no intentions of disrupting the constitutional order. He's argued that he's trying to restore it, and he claimed that liberal democracy was in peril. Then he insisted martial law was a political decision that's also legal under his executive authority. So his speech seemed to be an attempt to defend and justify himself as investigators close in on him on charges of possible insurrection, and he expects impeachment proceedings to begin, clearly. The second takeaway is that the president intends to fight to the end, as he said. And I would say this was quite typical of his unbending character. As a former prosecutor, once he makes a judgment, there seems to be no compromise or alternative path. And so we saw him apologize for creating anxiety, but he did not say he regretted imposing martial law, nor did he seem apologetic towards the lawmakers who he allegedly ordered to be dislodged physically from parliament by military troops. As he said, he seems to be ready to fight till the end, and that resigning is not even an option for him.
So that means President Yoon gears up for insurrection charges and also possible impeachment proceedings. Now, I have to ask you, how do you expect things to develop?
Well, investigators, of course, are closing in on him, and we saw police trying to raid the presidential office this week, 2 attempts in fact. And, well, there hasn't been a warrant execution for Yoon's official residence yet, but we see that investigations on him will close in even more. So it's been reported that the presidential office is reaching out to former legal secretaries as well as top law firms to form a legal defense team. President Yoon and his wife also withdrew from the Telegram messaging service, indicating, but perhaps hinting that they're preparing for a full-scale investigation. Some key aides are also believed to have deleted Telegram and switched their mobile phones as well.
Well, then you have to walk us through the consequences for President Yoon today. The question is, what powers would he continue to retain if he is or isn't impeached?
So if President Yoon is impeached today, then the Constitutional Court will begin a review of his impeachment proceedings, of course, and that would freeze his executive authorities as president after the National Assembly sends his office a notice notifying him that his executive powers have been frozen. And in President Park Geun-hye's case, former President Park Geun-hye's case, that took about 3 hours after the impeachment vote was made. So President Yoon, if impeached, only his title of being president would be retained. And when the impeachment motion against President Roh was passed in 2004, the Ministry of Justice prepared a report which stated a suspended president cannot exercise any powers, including diplomatic authority, appointment or dismissal of public officials, or command of the armed forces. The suspended president also cannot receive reports or give orders to public officials, such as the Prime Minister and cabinet ministers, or attend National Assembly sessions. However, the president is entitled to protocol privileges, such as residing in the presidential residence, using official vehicles and aircraft, as well as receiving security services. His office would also continue to function quite normally, with senior secretaries proceeding to answer to him as usual. However, if he's not impeached, he would retain his title, but it's highly likely that he would still lose his credibility and ability to govern effectively due to low public and political support. And as investigations into his possible insurrections will continue, it could lead to his arrest. And if he's arrested, the question would be whether he's considered to be in a state of an accident, which would deem him temporarily unable to perform his duties. The other option would be whether this creates a vacancy. So if his arrest is deemed an accident, in line with the Article 71 of the South Korean Constitution, the Prime Minister would take over as interim leader. But if it's considered a vacancy, in line with Article 68, an election must be called within 60 days.
Right, of course, we are talking about the worst case scenarios for our President Yoon. Soo-young, thank you so much for the report today. We appreciate it as always. Now, in the meantime, South Korea's two highest-ranking police officials are now in custody. That is a historic first for the nation. On top of that, the chief of the Capital Defense Command has also been arrested. Our Kim Jung-suk reports.
South Korea's top two police officials were detained on Friday night in an unprecedented blow to the nation's law enforcement leadership. National Police Agency Commissioner General Cho Ji-ho and Seoul Metropolitan Police Chief Kim Bong-sik face charges linked to the December 3rd martial law crisis, with the Seoul Central District Court citing evidence tampering risks. Police revealed the two attended a secret meeting at a presidential safe house hours before the martial law declaration, where they allegedly received a control entities document from President Yoon Suk-yeol. Both say the document was destroyed or is no longer in their possession. They did not mention the meeting during the initial investigation, but later mentioned it during questioning. Authorities also accused them of blocking lawmakers from entering the National Assembly to prevent the vote to revoke martial law. Meanwhile, prosecutors arrested Capital Defense Command Commander Lee Jin-woo over the deployment of troops to the National Assembly during the crisis. He testified about a phone call from President Yoon during an interview with DP lawmaker Kim Byung-ju on his YouTube channel.
Did you receive any orders or phone calls from President Yoon Suk-yeol during the operation?
There was one instance. He called and asked the same thing. What is the situation there? I responded, it's very chaotic and our personnel can't even get in. He listened quietly and said, all right, before hanging up.
He further claimed that the first group of troops deployed to the National Assembly carried firearms as part of their standard equipment, but the second team only carried blank ammunition to help de-escalate tensions. However, despite these assertions, images showing soldiers carrying ammunition boxes have fueled public outrage and intensified scrutiny over the military's actions. As the investigation continues, high-ranking officials have been arrested, and authorities are increasingly focusing on President Yoon, raising serious questions about his involvement in the crisis. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
It's the second impeachment vote in the space of a week, and so much has panned out and been discovered during the past 7 days. Let's recap the past week with our Eun-ji. Welcome, Eun-ji.
Thanks for having me.
So, Eun-ji, let's rewind to last Saturday when the first impeachment vote took place, now only to fail.
That's right. There have been overwhelming calls for President Yoon's resignation or impeachment as public outrage grows across the country. But last Saturday, the opposition party's motion to impeach the president failed to get enough votes after most of the ruling party lawmakers boycotted the vote. Most of them left the parliament before the vote, and only 195 votes were cast, below the threshold of 200, or 2/3 of the assembly needed for the vote to be valid. So the impeachment vote was scrapped without ballot counting. Now, as we heard in our previous report, the opposition bloc holds 192 seats, so at least 8 votes were needed from President Yoon's governing party for the impeachment motion to pass. Announcing that a vote on the impeachment motion has not been established, National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik said it was very unfortunate that there wasn't even a vote. Take a listen.
The entire nation is watching the decision being made here at the National Assembly today. The world is watching. It's very regrettable that there wasn't even a vote on such a major national issue.
The main opposition Democratic Party has said it'll not give up and has vowed to revive the impeachment motion every week. So eyes are now on whether the ruling party members will cast their vote today and if more than 8 ruling party lawmakers will vote in favor of impeaching the president.
So President Yoon delivered an apology on the first day, on the day of the first impeachment vote. And then earlier on Thursday, he delivered another public address. Now, what was that about?
That's right. President Yoon earlier addressed the public and apologized to South Koreans, but this week he made it clear that he has no intention to resign, saying that he will continue to fight the forces that threaten the future of South Korea. He appeared to try to justify his judgment on December 3rd, blaming the opposition party for repeatedly taking unconstitutional measures by abusing its powers. He said he was only trying to protect the country's constitutional order by exercising the president's powers within the framework of the Constitution.
그 목적은 국민들에게 거대 야당의 반국가적 패악을 알려 이를 멈추도록 경고하는 것이었습니다. 그럼으로써 자유민주주의 헌정 질서의 붕괴를 막고 국가 기능을 정상화하고자 하였습니다. 그 길밖에 없다고 판단해서 내린 대통령의 헌법적 결단이자 통치 행위가 어떻게 내란이 될 수 있습니까? 대통령의 비상계엄 선포권 행사는 사명권 행사, 외교권 행사와 같은 사법심사의 대상이 되지 않는 통치 행위입니다. 국민 여러분, 지금
He also said he had no intention of shutting down the parliament, arguing that if he had intended to do so, he would have cut off power and water supplies and restricted broadcast transmissions.
Wonji, investigations into what exactly happened on the night of the martial law are in full swing. Now, it looks like President Yoon is being targeted as a key figure in this whole political drama, now even as a ringleader, right?
That's right. Investigations into insurrection charges are now closing in on President Yoon as the probes into key officials accused of enforcing martial law are picking up speed. The police investigation team has said it's not only seeking to summon the president for questioning, but is also looking into requesting an arrest warrant as well as a search warrant for Yoon's residence in Central Seoul. During a press briefing by the police special investigation team on Friday, an official said that they're also considering requesting a warrant to seize the president's communication records. This comes after the police tried to raid the presidential office on Wednesday, but failed to get inside the building even with a search warrant after security guards refused to cooperate with the raid. After an hours-long standoff at the gates, the investigators had to leave and were able to receive only a limited number of documents through voluntary submission. Now, experts say that police will carry out a compulsory investigation into the president as they have deemed Yoon as a suspect based on the evidence they've gathered so far in a rare investigation into a sitting president for insurrection charges. President Yoon was placed under a travel ban earlier this week. Meanwhile, former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun has been arrested earlier this week after being named as the mastermind behind last week's failed imposition of martial law. Then on Wednesday, Kim was found by guards as he attempted suicide inside a detention center in eastern Seoul. His life is not currently in danger, and prosecutors have been questioning him over his involvement in imposing the martial law on December 3rd.
What's even more worrisome is that who will fill the potential presidential vacancy if President Yoon is impeached today or possibly in the future. Next in line is Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, right?
You're right. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo is supposed to serve as the country's acting president in the event of the impeachment passing, but Han was at the cabinet meeting just before Yoon's martial law declaration, and he has now been summoned for police questioning along with other cabinet members. Some opposition party lawmakers have accused Han of even being responsible for the martial law imposition. Although members at the cabinet meeting on the night of the martial law have said they were not able to stop Yoon's sudden course of action, criticism isn't inevitable since they were the last defenders who could have stopped the martial law declaration. So if Han is also impeached and is unable to serve as the acting president, next in line is the finance minister Choi Sang-mok, then the education minister Lee Ju-ho. However, there are concerns that if the prime minister is also suspended from his duties, it could lead to greater instability in the country's state affairs.
Thank you so much for the thorough wrap-up today, Anji.
Thank you.
So President Yoon's legal troubles are far from over, with insurrection charges closing in on the South Korean leader. Was his martial law order a pure act of governance or a clear act of insurrection? Let's turn to lawyer Kim Ji-soo. Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's start with the hot potato here. What President Yoon is arguing is that his order is not subject to judicial review, like the exercise of diplomatic power. Can this argument be justified as he insists?
Well, first, President Yoon's argument is very controversial. First of all, governing acts can be exempt from judicial review, and similar claims in history like financial real name reforms or troop deployment to Iraq were upheld as governing acts. However, they are not exempt from judicial review if they violate basic rights or constitutional principles. For example, there are past cases of Park Chung-hee's emergency measures, which is also known as 긴급 조치권, in the 1970s, and it was ruled unconstitutional despite being labeled as governing acts because it was considered it infringed on fundamental rights. So the Constitution strictly regulates martial law and requires specific conditions such as rebellion or war. And while Yoon accused the opposition of paralyzing the parliament and stating functions through repeated impeachments, attempts, and legislative manipulation, such parliamentary challenges like budget cuts don't quite meet this criteria. So it seems that as a conclusion, Yoon's justification seems more political than legal, and it is unlikely to stand scrutiny given the lack of extreme emergency, which is considered to breach the Constitution.
Well, when talking about the night of the martial law order, we have to talk about the martial troop deployment, which is another significant part of his argument that a small number of martial law troops were deployed to maintain the order at the parliament. What he's saying is that it wasn't a riot. What makes such deployment a necessary order? I'm asking if there are any legal guidelines.
So first, we need to understand what martial law is capable of. South Korea's constitution allows martial law when regular public forces like police can't control the severity of the unrest. And there is also a Article 77 from our constitution stating that the martial law grants the military to take over executive and administration to maintain security. However, at the same time, it also states that the martial law requires either a war-like situation or public unrest beyond public control. So martial law has its strong legal boundaries due to its severity of the impact. And we would like to consider that, was there a war-like situation right now? Deploying troops requires a severe unrest, like at the brink of the war or a situation of rebellion. And President Yoon's reasoning, so-called opposition budget actions and political disputes, doesn't meet these thresholds. So in conclusion, it is unarguable to state that military deployment was a last resort, not a tool for resolving political gridlock. So no matter how a small number it was, using military force to interfere with parliament was definitely an abuse of power.
Well, I do have to add that testimonies from military officers are that President Yoon ordered them to drag people out from inside the parliament. Now, the testimonies will also make the judgment quite complicated, won't they?
Yes, these testimonies add real complexity to the situation here. As mentioned before, even under the guise of maintaining order, the martial law does not allow actions that undermine democratic institutions, and blocking parliament or preventing lawmakers from gathering violates the very principles of civilian control over the military and the constitution. And there was also a past rulings like those on Chun Doo-hwan's coup, which clearly stated that disrupting constitutional governance was illegal and punishable. So the Constitutional Court will decide if his actions were constitutional, and they will examine whether the martial law violated democratic principles or disrupted parliament. And if Yoon directly ordered arrests or removals, it could be the definite evidence of insurrection. However, right now, there's only testimony, so investigators need solid proof like phone records or direct orders to resolve the situation.
Right, collecting meaningful evidence will play as a crucial factor here. Then let's say the vote is passed tonight and then the case goes to the Constitutional Court. I hear the Constitutional Court has 180 days to deliberate and rule on Yoon's future. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And let's break down the Constitutional Act by one. So under Article 38 of the Constitutional Court Act, the court must issue a ruling within 180 days from the date the case is filed. And this is the maximum period, ensuring cases don't drag on indefinitely. But cases often conclude faster depending on their urgency and complexity. And if key witnesses are absent or evidence gathering becomes complex, the delays can also occur. There is also an Article 52 that allows rescheduling if a party fails to attend hearings. So as a conclusion, impeachment cases are usually expedited due to their national importance. However, the court's reduced number of justices could extend the timeline for right now, and President Yoon's declared intent to fight the process could also complicate the proceedings. So while the 180-day rule is firm, it seems that nothing is guaranteed for it right now.
Right, I asked that because I remember it didn't even take 100 days for former Presidents Park Geun-hye and Roh Moo-hyun, right?
Yes, definitely. The impeachment of Park Geun-hye and Roh Moo-hyun took less than 100 days due to the differences in political and legal circumstances. While 6 months is the limit, past cases like Park Geun-hye's impeachment in 2016 took only about 91 days, and Roh Moo-hyun's was only resolved in just 63 days. So for Roh Moo-hyun cases, his impeachment was politically driven, centered on 3 charges, including election law violations, and the case only focused it on fewer and simpler charges and didn't involve confirmed criminal accusations, which led the opposition quickly aligned, leading to a swift process. And for Park Geun-hye's cases, she faced strong public and parliamentary consensus over her corruption and abuse of power. And due to the severity of the allegations and massive public protests, it expedited the court's decision to impeach her.
Right,
So
they are vastly different cases.
yes, and lastly, for Yoon's cases, on the legal perspective, he's quite mixed. The accusations, including 22 constitutional and legal violations, resemble the complexity of Park Geun-hye's. However, the nature of his martial law declaration echoes the less straightforward aspects of President No. So, as a conclusion, Yoon's case might follow a similar timeline to previous 2 cases, which is around 2 months. And as the procedural framework and criteria for impeachment are already well established, it could end sooner.
Well, watchers say that the process leading up to the verdict could be quite a journey. 1, because of how complicated the case is, and 2, because it's not 1 or 2 people involved in the case, right?
That is correct. The case isn't just about Yoon. It involves a large network of individuals across different branches of power, a high-ranking officials from military, police, and government ministries. So there are 3 main key figures in this incident. So first, Yoon is accused of being the final authority behind the martial law declaration, definitely. And there is a former defense minister, Kim Yong-hwan, and Army Chief of Staff Park An-soo and other senior military commanders are also implicated in these allegations. And there are multiple commanders in military involvement and also cabinet members such as senior government officials, including the ministers of Justice and Interior, are also facing accusations of aiding and abetting martial law enforcement. So, as a conclusion, the sheer number of key figures and witnesses will make the investigation and trial more time-consuming and last-longing.
Definitely. Already, thank you so much for your time and your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And large political rallies, both for and against President Yoon, are set to sweep across the capital city in the run-up to the impeachment vote. One obvious rally spot is Yeouido, where the vote is taking place today, and our Euni is there right now. Now, Euni, I see that it doesn't look as crowded as last week, still crowded. Tell us what you're seeing right now.
Yes, Dami, good morning. I'm right here at the National Assembly in Yeouido, where protests both calling for and opposing President Yoon Suk-yeol's resignation have been going on for the past few days. So far, it seems like a smaller crowd than what we saw last week, with people voicing their demands. Their demands ahead of the second scheduled vote on President Yoon's impeachment later at 4 p.m. It is definitely getting louder and louder here at the scene. And so let's go ahead and hear what those who have been out since early this morning have to say.
I came all the way from New York because I can't tolerate the policy where Yoon Suk-yeol is reportedly trying to target and harm our younger doctor colleagues.
I'm a student and I'll be joining a pre-rally with other students from my school at 1 p.m. The president's impeachment should have happened last week, so it's frustrating that it's been delayed by a week. I'm hopeful it will happen this week, but if not, I'll keep pushing and showing people that this is how we, the women in their 20s and 30s, feel.
Since the declaration of martial law, which lasted for 6 hours earlier this month, protests have spread across many cities in the country. In the capital city, Seoul, large-scale protests are typically held at Gwanghwamun Square. However, martial law-related demonstrations and rallies calling for the president's resignation are mainly in Yeouido, which is where the National Assembly is located, while rallies supporting President Yoon are concentrated in Gwanghwamun. Here around the National Assembly, organizations including the Korean Federation of Trade Unions, South Korea's largest labor union, will hold a candlelight rally scheduled to start at 3 p.m., where over 1 million people are expected to gather. Going over to Gwanghwamun, organizations in support of President Yoon, including the Liberty Unification Party, are set to hold a large counter-protest starting at 1 p.m. Organizations anticipate at least 100,000 participants. In addition, several other organizations in support of the president have announced plans to hold a rally near the National Assembly's main gates. Tensions are expected to escalate, particularly when the results of the impeachment vote are announced.
Eunhee, we are expecting over 1 million people to take to the streets across Seoul just today. How is the capital city preparing to brace for such a large crowd then?
Yes, in response, there will be stronger response and security measures compared to last week. At the moment, there are no huge telecommunication errors at the moment, but as the crowd grows, there might be similar issues like last week, where people had experienced poor connections, and so especially around here at the National Assembly. According to the Ministry of Science and ICT, major telecommunication companies plan to deploy an additional 36 telecom-based stations around crowded areas and establish nearly 40 temporary stations to handle the surge in telecommunication traffic. Those companies will also assign over 100 personnel for real-time monitoring and on-site support. Seoul City will deploy over 1,000 on-site personnel, including police officers and the fire department personnel, expand emergency medical teams, and use traffic and security CCTV to monitor crowd density. Additionally, with more students participating in recent protests, the Seoul Metropolitan Office of Education has created safety response teams to prepare for any emergencies in crowded areas of Yeouido and Gwanghwamun. Nearly 200 personnel will be stationed on-site before the protests begin and will ensure that students return home safely afterwards. So subway stations on lines 5 and 9, which are the most used routes to reach Yeouido and Gwanghwamun, will also have increased services.
That was our Eunhee live from Yeouido, just outside the National Assembly. Thank you, Eunhee. You stay safe there.
Thank you, Dami.
And lit candles have been a symbol of protest here in the country. But now, lights that you would usually see at concerts are taking the center stage at rallies now, functioning as something that unites the people. Our An Sung-jin has more.
Peaceful yet passionate, festive but serious. These somewhat contradicting words accurately represent the scene of recent political protests in South Korea. Candlelit protests had already garnered a lot of attention from the protests back in 2016. But following a then lawmaker's statement that candles go out when the wind blows, This time, protesters found another way to convey their message: K-pop and light sticks. It's merchandise used by fans to cheer for their favorite idols. And with these, the atmosphere at these political rallies has changed. What you're seeing behind is row after row of protesters with light sticks, chanting messages while singing along to K-pop songs. At night, the weather is well below zero, but the heat from these rallies is a powerful symbol that signifies solidarity. A new protest culture has emerged, and it's being embraced by different age groups, but led by those in their 20s and 30s.
I felt bad that I didn't come immediately after the martial law declaration because of school, so as soon as it was over, I came straight away.
I'm in my 50s and I can really see that protests change a lot over time, which is touching. It's meaningful that a lot of young people have been leading these protests in a very peaceful manner, yet also being very vocal at the same time.
One expert says that K-pop helps give people a voice.
For these people, light sticks are a very precious item to them. The fact that they bring them out here means that they think of these rallies as a safe space where one can voice themselves while expressing uniqueness.
Alongside light sticks and chants, banners with quirky names or slogans were also there to demonstrate that it's ordinary people who are showing signs of support.
Last week's news was really shocking, the martial law announcement, and then I'm glad that it's all peaceful so far. No violence and no soldiers on the streets.
This nonviolent method of protest is only one aspect of democratic citizenship, or a sense of civic consciousness despite the political turmoil. During these rallies, supporters were seen prepaying for meals or drinks at cafes and nearby restaurants. Though protests take place to express political dissent, the scenes of them instead show harmony, unity across generations, and consideration for each other. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Economic perception has been not so good amid the political risks at home and risk factors beyond the borders. Our Moon Hae-ryun tells us more.
The South Korean government has raised concerns over potential economic downturn risks, highlighting a decline in consumer and business confidence. That's according to the latest Economic Green Book, a monthly economic assessment report released by the Finance Ministry on Friday. The first report to be released since the martial law incident last Tuesday states that while inflation remains under control, growing domestic and international uncertainties could further dampen economic sentiment, raising the likelihood of economic risks contributing to an economic slowdown. The report reflects a darker outlook compared to the previous month, with the term gradual economic recovery omitted and replaced with concerns about growing uncertainty.
The only official data we have is on industrial activity from October, and there isn't enough preliminary data to make an accurate judgment about the current economic situation. We asked ourselves, what is the most accurate word to describe the current economic situation? We also reviewed past Green Book assessments from similar situations in the past.
Although terms like martial law or impeachment crisis were not explicitly mentioned, the government noted that the prolonged political turmoil is likely to cause households to tighten spending and businesses to slow down investment. The report also revealed weak domestic recovery trends, with private consumption up only 0.5% from the previous quarter in the third quarter of the year. Retail sales in October showed a mixed picture, with non-durable goods and semi-durable goods showing a rise in sales, while durable goods saw a significant decline month-on-month. Additionally, October's facility investment and construction figures showed negative growth, signaling persistent challenges in the economy. However, export performance remained stable, with November's exports increasing by 1.4% year-on-year. This marks the 14th consecutive month of positive growth. The government emphasized that despite geopolitical risks, global economic recovery remains intact, but further uncertainties, particularly in trade environments, continue to pose challenges. Moving forward, the government plans to maintain strong international credibility while reinforcing efforts to support economic stability and strengthen industrial competitiveness. During an emergency economic meeting on Friday, finance authorities reported a conference call with 3 major international credit rating agencies to note the strong fundamentals of South Korea's economy. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
And the political chaos is causing safety concerns and maybe ringing alarm bells for foreign visitors to South Korea. Is it safe to travel? Our Lee Soo-jin has this report.
From January to October this year, South Korea welcomed almost 14 million foreign tourists, recovering 94% of the visitors seen in the same period of 2019 before the COVID-19 pandemic. However, President Yoon Suk-yeol's declaration of martial law on December 3rd has had an impact on the travel industry. An official from a hotel near the National Assembly in Yeouido told a local news agency that on the day after the declaration of martial law, the cancellation rate was 44% higher than the December average. The Four Seasons Hotel as whole usually has 60 to 70% of its bookings from foreign tourists. After the martial law declaration, the hotel received over 100 inquiries. Although the actual cancellation rate was low, a hotel official said that bookings for December remain uncertain. In response, the South Korean government has acted to minimize the effect on the tourism industry. The Culture Ministry has asked the tourism industry to inform other countries that tourist sites are operating as usual. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs also sent a note to foreign missions in Korea assuring that daily life remains unchanged and therefore there is no need to adjust travel advisories.
We started planning our honeymoon like
8 months ago.
Nine
maybe
9
months ago.
And Korea was always on our wish list. So we decided to go to Korea. We were gonna wait to hear like for the big news, and then we're going to the site. But we thought everything is normal, so we decided to come.
We just arrived today, and everything seems perfect, and yeah, we're happy.
And amazing.
Yeah.
For those visiting Korea for the second time, their understanding of the protest culture and safety concerns didn't stop them from returning.
Well, this is my second time to Korea, and this year I bring along my family, my wife and my kids.
Yeah, here we feel like home actually. Yeah, I feel excited, and this is one of my dream country that I want to go.
I mean, it happened a few days before I was supposed to fly, and I definitely had to keep an eye on the situation. But I wasn't too worried because I've experienced protesting in Korea before, and I know it's a very, very safe place to be. So.
While it's uncertain how long the current instability will last, efforts are being made to ensure the safety and well-being of all citizens, residents, and visitors alike who are seeking the same peace and security during their time in South Korea. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
That wraps up our special coverage on the second impeachment motion against the South Korean leader over his martial law order. Do join us later at 2 p.m. Korea time for more updates and developments. Thanks for watching.